God's guidance during this conversation. And I hope for a roadmap to strengthen our academic offerings. Truthfully, the challenges are complex. But today we seek to examine our assumptions, release our creativity, and find fresh approaches. We express our profound gratitude and extend a warm welcome to our panelists, presenters, and guests. Our moderator today is Dr. Rory Richards. He serves as assistant to the president of the Northeastern Conference. We want to welcome him at this time.
Good morning again to everyone. And as President Jules has shared with us, this is an occasion that we have set aside so that we can do a deep dive into our educational system. We do believe that God has given us a great gift, and we have been made stewards of this gift. But as we have seen over the years, there has been a steady decline in the enrollment, in also just the sheer reach and influence and impact of our Christian education. So today, we want you to join the conversation. There is a QR code that is made available to all participants. This QR code will allow you to enter into the room where you can voice your opinion. You can also share your thoughts. So you can start doing that now. So we'd like to do a little test just to make sure that our QR code is working, that everyone knows how it works. All you have to do is hold up your phone before the QR code, and when it prompts you, click on it, and it will take you into the room. So I'm going to ask my media team to assist me at this time, and we are going to do a test. We're going to do some test questions. So I'm going to ask the media team also to please help me with the monitor in front of me so that we can see that as well. So can we get that test question up with our QR code? Let's do that at this time so we can put our test question. All right. So we would like you to tell us, how are you feeling today? That's the question that we are putting up right now as we are testing our QR code. We want to see you going in and clicking on it and giving us that opinion. So we want to see the results to make sure that you are there and that you are also participating in this conversation. Also, we want you to know that you can, even now, as the program progresses, you can go to the comment section and write the suggestions that you may have. What suggestions you have that you would like to share with us of how our education system, Adventist Christian education, can be improved. Write them in so that we can start collecting them from now. Or if you have any questions, also put those questions in there. So when we get to the question and answer section, we can already have your questions queued up into the system. We have a very special guest who is coming to us all the way from the West Coast. And she is someone who is very integral to Christian Seventh-day Adventist education. At this time, we're going to tell you a little more about her as we present her introduction before she comes to you with the keynote thought for today.
Dr. Elisa Kitto is Professor of Education and Director of the Center of Research on Adventist Education K-12 at La Sierra University. She's been an educator for over 40 years, teaching language arts, English, and English education from the 5th grade level through graduate school. While Dean of the School of Education at La Sierra University, she was the principal investigator of the Cognitive Genesis Project, a research study to assess the academic achievement of K-12 students in Seventh-day Adventist schools in the United States and Canada. The research of this 4-year comprehensive study brought national media attention to Adventist education and was the impetus for the 2014 PBS documentary film, The Blueprint, The Story of Adventist Education, by Martin Doblemir. Her current research focus is on brain neuroplasticity and character development. For her research and contributions to Adventist education, she has received the Journey to Excellence Award, the Charles E. Wagner Award for Excellence, the North American Division Award for Excellence, and an honorary doctor in pedagogy from Andrews University.
Good morning, everyone. Greetings from California. We're 3 hours behind you, but today's a beautiful and sunny day. So what the introduction did not say, and I want to be totally transparent, is that I am an education evangelist. So in addition to my other responsibilities and commitments, I am an education evangelist. I hope that many of you out there can say the same. So my topic for today is Adventist education the best investment for your child? And you want to make a note, a mental note of how you might vote on that, since we will be doing some voting a little later on. So here's how you might vote. Yes, no, maybe, or you don't know. If you were asked this question, is Adventist education the best investment for your child? Now, I'm going to talk about the advantages of Adventist education in 3 different categories. One is academically, spiritually, and professionally. So let's start with the academics. Ask yourself again, is this the best investment for your child? Let me see. Let me tell you a little bit about the Cognitive Genesis Project, which you heard something about in the intro. I had the privilege for being the project director for this, and notice that it was an NAD project, so all the schools across the United States, Canada, and Bermuda participated in it. So in the end, there were about 52,000 students, grades 3 through 9, and the participating schools also participated. And of course, the teachers and principals of those schools did the same. Now, you want to know what the results of this? This was a 4-year study, not a 1-year study in which people could say, oh, that was unusual or that was an outlier year. But here it is, 4 years. Now, you can't see the answers to this unless you look really closely because they're in white there. Students in Adventist schools outperformed the national average on standardized tests. Now, they were taking the same tests that millions of other students were taking in all schools across the US and Canada. And here's what the results were. They scored above the national average in all subjects and in all grades. Now, some of you are sitting together, I think maybe in the church there. I would say I hope to hear hallelujah and amens. I can't hear you, but that's what I would like to hear. Imagine this result of 4 years. So let's go on to the next slide. Whoops. I'm not sure. Okay, now they scored above their predicted or expected achievement. So we did an abilities test first that tells us what is the ability of a child, and then how did they perform in terms of achievement. Here's what they did. They scored above their predicted or expected achievement in all subjects, for all grade levels, for all school sizes, and regardless of ability level. Now, I hope I'm imagining that I'm hearing some amens and some hallelujahs out there. This is quite remarkable, as were the results of all the tests for all those years. I am sorry that I'm not so great here at advancing the slides. Okay, so we call them overachievers. These students overachieved. They also increased in ability. Now, Ellen White in Education says it is the work of true education to train the youth to be thinkers. I'm saying that's ability, and not mere reflectors of other people's thoughts. That's achievement. So I ask parents, which would you rather have? Your child know all the capitals of all 50 some odd states we have in the US? Or would you rather have your child be able to solve a problem, a word problem, and that requires more ability instead of achievement? And I think you would answer, I want my child to be able to figure out a problem, to solve a problem. Now, it didn't matter what the school size was, whether it was small or large, there were very little differences. But when there was a difference, guess what? The differences are consistently in favor of small schools. So don't let small deter you from sending your child to our school. You know, great things, good things come in small packages. And I can tell you story after story where we have a one teacher school and those kids were outstanding in terms of achievement and ability. Now, there's something that we're calling the Adventist school effect. And this is what happens with more years in school. So we have 8th grade students here. And notice from year 1, which is at the bottom, until 8 years, year 8, the trajectory is up, up, up. So they continue to increase in achievement as well as in ability the longer that they're in our schools. And we're calling that the Adventist school effect. So the question is, again, is there an Adventist academic advantage? How would you answer that? And I would answer it as this young woman does, young student does, in which she's got an A+ on her test. We can give the Adventist school system in the academic area an A+. And I'm not basing this on feelings or whatever, but on data. And I've just shared the data with you. So now let's go to spiritual and say, oh, I forgot to say, and I think you may see a trailer somewhere during this presentation, but because we did so well, and because there was media out there about our school system, Martin Doblmeier, a PBS filmmaker, contacted me and said, we need to make a movie. We need to make a documentary of the Adventist school system. And I should put his words here in quotations because this is what he said. He said, let's tell the extraordinary story of Adventist education. So he did produce a documentary that was released in 2014, and within 2 years, there were 40 to 50 million viewers. And PBS contacted me after our contract of 2 years was over and said, we got such good responses that we'd like to do it another 2 years. Would you allow us to do that? So we said yes. And many people then saw this on PBS television. I want you to note that he titled it, this was his choice, The Blueprint. And that comes from Ellen White, who gave us the blueprint for Adventist education. Now, if I can just tell you, when you see the documentary, you'll say, well, how did they choose the schools that were there? And I would love to have chosen the schools in the documentary. But Martin Doppelmayr said, no, this is an independent film. You cannot have input into which schools are chosen. So he said, but what you can do is give me a list of schools across the US, and then I will go out and scout and see which ones I want to use in the film. Well, during that time, I held my breath and I prayed, Lord, let Martin Doppelmayr see all the good things about our schools. Let him ignore that we don't have the greatest buildings, that we might not have up-to-date labs everywhere. And I prayed that prayer. I held my breath, and then he came back and he said, Alyssa, you have real stars out there. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean, Martin? And he said, your teachers, your principals, I've never seen such devoted, committed education personnel as in your schools. So he said, they are real stars. So teachers out there, principals out there, just remember this accolade that somebody, a non-Adventist, a filmmaker, came through and looked at our schools and made this assertion. If you haven't seen it, you'll want to see this. Okay, so now we've talked about academic advantages. Now, what about spiritual advantages? Parents have said to me, especially when I was dean, they would come and say, well, I think I'm going to send my child to the school down the street. I don't have to pay any tuition. It's so convenient, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, do you think that they would get the spiritual advantages that we offer in our schools? And they said, oh, sure. You know, we go to church every Sabbath regularly, so they'll get it there. But I'm wondering if you really feel like one day a week of spiritual activities will do it. So let's look at some research that was done by Bailey Gillespie, Dr. Gillespie, who's passed away now, but who did this very important study called Value Genesis. Now, I did cognitive, which had to do with achievement. He did Value Genesis, which had to do with the ethics and behavior and values of our children in schools. And look what he found. He said, after the home, the Adventist classroom is the most significant influence on the child. By instruction and example, the Adventist teacher reinforces essential religious values. Now, let me tell you, we have a lot of good public schools, and we have a lot of good teachers out in those public schools, but they cannot do what we can do in our schools, and that is reinforce, teach religious values. What is it to be an Adventist? Okay, so in that same study, 81% of all the students say attending an Adventist school is the most important thing that has helped me develop my religious faith. Now look at that, 81%, okay, of students say that. So it's a pretty remarkable influence that being in an Adventist school has on spiritual development. Now, I share this research finding with you. Pastors out there, pay close attention to this. Higher achieving schools have good support from pastors and their constituent church members. Now, think a minute. Higher achieving schools have good support from pastors and their constituent churches. We found that schools that did not have good support from their pastors or their constituent churches were not as good in achievement. And so when this study came out and this fact came out, pastors came to me and they said, I'm a little bit perplexed about this, Alyssa. What is it that we do that helps with achievement? And I said, I really don't know, Pastor. What do you do when you go to the school? So these are some of the replies. I give a chapel talk. I play basketball with the boys. I go at lunchtime and have lunch with them in the cafeteria. And also, I pray with them. Now, we have not had time to explore this further, except to get testimonials from pastors. But you can see what they're doing is their presence on campus has some kind of effect, because those schools where we have pastors on campus and where the constituent church members, that's you all sitting in the audience, are supportive of the schools, those schools have higher achievement. Now, parents say to me, well, you know, my child can go to a public school, because what effect does spiritual factors have on academics? There's no relationship. Well, I'd like to share with you the results of what is the effect, what's the relationship between spiritual factors and academic achievement. So someone did a study, Marianne Gilbert, who at the time that she came to us was an attorney and a principal. So she left law to come into education, and she did this comprehensive study looking at spiritual factors and how they affect academic achievement. And here's what she found. There were a lot of things she found, but I'll just share one thing with you. If religion or spirituality was emphasized at school, if a mother was very spiritual, if teachers were very spiritual, this is what happened. Students who had those three factors were 8.5 plus months ahead in academic achievement than students who didn't have those factors. So take a look at that. 8.5 months or more is a huge gain. Now, I like to tease the fathers here and say, I'm not sure what your influence is, but maybe we might want to work on that at home, because it's the mother's spirituality and the teacher's spirituality. And is spirituality or religion emphasized at school? This is what I consider the Adventist education advantage. I have yet to figure out a good graphic, but I'd like you to imagine that at our schools, the spiritual is infusing everything. It's infusing the spirit, the physical, the mental, the social, and the emotional. Throughout our curriculum, we have spiritual goals. Throughout our curriculum, God as creator is emphasized, and the fact that your child is a child of God. Our teachers, our schools are committed to developing your child's God-given potential. So this is what I see as the big advantage and what I call the Adventist education advantage. Now, I'd like to spend a little bit of time with something called mirror neurons. You may have heard of them recently because they're gaining more public awareness, but actually they're a pretty new a discovery about in the mid 1995 or mid 1990s, 1995, 1996, mirror neurons were discovered. Now, what are they? They're exactly what they say they are, mirror. We have neurons in our brain that whenever we see something, hear something, it makes a mirror neuron in our brain. So it's up there. So whatever we see, whatever we hear, our brain is making a copy of it, a mirror, it's mirroring. And what's the effect of that? Well, they did an experiment. See this little baby here? I mean, he's pretty little or she's pretty little. But notice the baby can imitate what the adult is doing and doing that by forming a mirror neuron. When somebody yawns and you yawn, I used to think it was something in the air, you know, when someone yawned, then we all started yawning. It has to do with mirror neurons. Now, ask yourself, what mirror neurons do you want your child or children to be forming Monday through Friday, okay, in school? What kind of mirror neurons do you want them to be forming? And I would say you want to know that the environment that they're in, they're seeing Jesus, they're seeing God, and they're making mirror neurons, okay, for that. So when they're studying that, when they see their teacher or principal or fellow students, are they making a mirror neuron that is reflective of Jesus or God? That's the question. Now, so you can answer later or in your minds, are there spiritual advantages? I hope that I've given you some data so that you can answer that question. Now, the last area we'll look at for right now are there professional advantages? As parents, you're naturally and understandably concerned about what will your child do in the future? Will your child be prepared in all these various areas to be a success in whatever career or profession he or she chooses? So now I'd like to give you an example of one student. This student came from a poor family, a Japanese family that was sent during World War II to the internment camps, and this family was sent to Heart Mountain, Wyoming. But somehow, not somehow, through lots of effort and sacrifice, this child was able to get an Adventist education, even though the parents were blue-collar workers. The mother was a domestic and cleaned houses, and the father was a doorman. So you see, they didn't have a lot of money. They did have a church, however, that tried to help them with the tuition. So this child, this Japanese boy, went to Adventist schools, grades 1 through 8, San Francisco Junior Academy. Then 9 through 12, Mountain View Academy. It's in California. Then grades 13 to 16, Pacific Union College, and then to medical school at Loma Linda University. For specialized education, this individual took a residency in radiology at Loma Linda University and the University of Southern California. Then he took another fellowship in neuroradiology at Cornell University, back where you are, right in New York City. Why did he go all the way back there? Now, this was a long time ago, but believe it or not, at that time in the US, there were only 5 CT scanners. Now, I'm sure most of you know what a CT scanner is. You may have had a CT scan yourself. Imagine now every hospital, every clinic has a CT scanner, okay? So they can look in your brain, look in your body. But at that time, there were only 5. So he was advised, if you want to be a neuroradiologist, you need to go where there's a scanner, a CT scanner. So he went back to New York City, to Cornell, New York University Hospital, and did a Neuroradiology Fellowship there. Now, he found that, how did he get this Neuroradiology Fellowship? It was an exclusive, very prestigious fellowship. And later on, he found that he had a recommendation from a former professor of his who emphasized in the recommendation, well, he's not a particularly outstanding medical student. He was, about average in the middle of his class. But what he did have was he had character. And these are some of the characteristics that he had: conscientiousness, curiosity, self-control and willpower, grit, integrity, optimism, and look at this, kindness and gratitude. These are some of the characteristics of someone of good character. Research indicates that character, not cognition, is the key to success. I'm not sure if that's surprising to you or not, but that's the case with research. And more, I think I value people who are kind and who are grateful. So this individual now, all Adventist education through medical school, some residency. Where did he get his first job? Where was his first job? And remember, parents have said to me, I can't send my child to an Adventist school because they're not going to get a good job. They're not going to get into a good graduate program. So they need to go somewhere else. So this individual, all Adventist education through medical school and some residency, where was his first job? His first job was at Harvard University. And now I'm going to tell you, this individual happens to be my husband. And that's why I can have all the details of his educational career. So his first job was at Harvard. And I think that when I tell parents that, they're a little bit amused. And not amused, shocked maybe, or surprised. But you see, Adventist education is excellence is its goal. Excellence in academics and excellence in character. And this is where it got my husband, Danny. Now, so if you were to ask, what are the professional advantages, you'll be able to answer that, I hope, and we'll get a chance maybe to talk about it a little later on. So let's talk about now investment. Danny's parents had to invest a lot, but in Adventist education, it's an investment of time. So look, it's 6 hours a day, 180 days a year for 13 years if you go through preschool. And it turns out to be 14,040 hours of education, of being in our schools. So you have to wonder and think about mirror neurons. Think about the spiritual advantages I've told you about. Think now, if a child is exposed to all of the things that I've spoken about, what will be the outcomes for that? But right now we're looking at investment. It's an investment of money. No question about that. That's, I think, one of our challenges is, how do we make Adventist education affordable? And it's also an investment in sacrifice. Yes, parents have to sacrifice. They have to sacrifice time. They have to sacrifice driving their child to school. It's a big sacrifice. And it's a big sacrifice because to send your child to an Adventist education is a huge decision because it's a huge investment. Yes, you're going to invest money and you're going to invest sacrifice. But here are some other things that you're going to get out of your investment. It's an investment in relationships. I have something that I call the big three: family, school, church. These three entities are working in your child's life for his or her success. And imagine the relationships that your child is making, not just at home, but at church and at school. People have said who have gone to our schools that some of the best relationships they had were those they made while in Adventist schools, and they still continue those friendships into their adulthood. So it's an investment in relationships. It's an investment in health. Many of you know about the Adventist Health Study. You may have participated in it. My husband did. And you know that if you are an Adventist and you practice certain health habits, you are going to live 8 to 10 years longer in good health. And we live in Riverside, which is right close to, maybe about 15 miles from Loma Linda. And you've heard about the blue zone. Loma Linda is a blue zone because people there are healthier and live longer and have a better quality of life when they live longer, as they live longer. So it's an investment, and your child will learn about that as he or she is in our schools and churches. They'll learn about being healthier. Now, it's also an investment in worldview and character. So Ellen White says in Child Guidance, the highest class of education, notice this, the highest class of education is that which will give such knowledge and discipline as will lead to the best development of character. A while ago, George Akers said, the overarching purpose of our schools, the macro effect, when it's all said and done, is to give our youth a Christian worldview, to see everything from God's point of view as revealed in his inspired word. It's giving our students a Christian mind, teaching them how to think Christian. So we all know, or we've been taught, Ellen White in her blueprint says that character is the cornerstone of Adventist education, but not character just for now to get good jobs, but for eternity. And so I say to you, Adventist education is an investment in eternity. Ellen White further says, something better, the watchword of education. And I want to challenge you and encourage you to invest in something better. Thank you.
Across America, there are 55 million children in school today, kindergarten through high school, and nearly 4 million of them attend a faith-based school, a school operated by a religion or a faith group.
People who choose to send their children to faith-based institutions have the belief that that institution mirrors what they believe in the home.
The fabric of American education really is broader than the public school system. Parents deserve the right to have the choice of what kind of education their children get.
One of the largest faith-based school systems belongs to the Seventh-day Adventists. Adventists are a Christian faith grounded in the Bible. who operate nearly 1,000 mostly smaller schools.
In all grades and in all subjects, students in Adventist schools performed above the national average.
The schools all follow a blueprint for education, designed by the church's principal visionary, Ellen White. That blueprint, authored more than a century ago, calls for the teaching of the whole child, body, mind, and spirit.
What I feel is the advantage in this school is that we don't have to teach in a spiritual vacuum.
From the beginning, Ellen White insisted on what at the time was a novel idea.
Curriculum organization is very much set by her and emphasizes the needs for students to have practical training, to be able to be prepared for careers, in fact, for jobs, as well as stimulating the mind. And that becomes what Adventists often call the blueprint for Adventist education.
A blueprint for education.
We have certainly received a great heritage that the Lord has given us as Seventh-day Adventists. We just heard from Dr. Elisa Quito how the research has bared witness to the fact that we have a great system. What could be the issue then? Perhaps Adventist Christian education maybe is the greatest secret ever kept. And that secret is kept so tight that even Seventh-day Adventists don't know about it. I want to share 3 quotes with you as we get ready to start our discussion. But before I share those quotes, can you please make sure that you have joined the conversation through our QR code? I'm going to ask my media team to please help me putting it up again on the screen so that those who are just joining us may be able to scan it and get into the conversation. Please start writing your comments and suggestions and your questions that we will deal with later on today as we start this discussion. So now, the first quote that I want to share with you comes from the book Education, page 13. Education, page 13. And it says this: our ideas of education take too narrow and too low range. There is need for a broader scope, a higher aim. True education means more than the pursuit of certain course of study. It means more than the preparation for life that is now. It has to do with the whole being and with the whole period of existence possible to man. It is the harmonious development of the physical, the mental, and the spiritual powers. It prepares the student for the joy of service in this world and for a higher joy of wider service in the world to come. So as you can see, this framework of what Adventist Christian education is about, it is about preparing students for an excellent life performance in this life, and also prepare them for eternity. No other system does that. Other systems may prepare them for this life, and that's it. But our system prepares our students for both this life and the life to come. I got one more for you. Education page 225. Education page 225, and I'm going to ask my media team to please help me putting it up so that those who are watching us can follow along. It says, true education does not ignore the value of scientific knowledge or literary acquirements. But above information, it values power. Above power, goodness. Above intellectual acquirements, character. The world does not so much need men of great intellect as of noble character. It needs men in whom ability is controlled by steadfast principle. And the studies that Dr. Hito cited earlier told us about the importance of character. And that's what the servant of the Lord is saying here. So, in the light of all this wonderful framework that makes up what Adventist Christian education is, why then are we having the challenges we're having? Why then have we been having a steady decline in our enrollment? Those are some of the questions that we want to grapple with today as we have this conversation. You have heard the statement that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. Well, the day has come, and the time is now, that we take an honest look at what we have been doing that has brought us to the place where we are, crises in our system. And the time has come that we do something different, because what is the unknown? What we have not yet tried. Going back to what the Lord has given us and ignoring the things that we have been doing that are not bearing the results. I'll leave this final quote with you before we introduce our panelists that are going to help us with this conversation. It's a provocative statement, but it's a true one. Mr. R. Buckminster Fuller, he said this. Media team, put it up for me so that the audience can follow me. Listen to what he said. He said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." So it's time to build something new, something according to what God wants us to do. At this moment, we're going to welcome our panelists, and they're going to be introduced at this time, so pay attention to who they are and what they're going to bring to the table.
Elliot Phipps is president and founder of Lynx Logistics LLC, a delivery service partner of Amazon. A business professional and life coach, Elliot led the Eastern Region Corporate Sales Organization for FedEx until retiring in 2019 to pursue a doctorate in education with an express purpose of restoring the image of our Creator in every child. He has a passion for learning and believes experimental learning through problem solving is a key to developing critical thinking, a missing element in education today. Among his career achievements are design and delivery of corporate sales training at FedEx, flight crew training at ATA, launching Silicon Airlines, a joint venture airline with Nigeria, founder of Stanton Elliott Bowties, and Takes the Cake in Indiana. Elliot is the product of Adventist education, attending R.T. Hudson School, Northeastern Academy, and Oakwood College before graduating from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and later an MBA from DeVry University. He was instrumental in starting the Ephesus Spin Cycle to encourage health and wellness through cycling. While board chair at Capital City SDA School in Lake Region, the school was awarded a $500,000 match grant from the Ellie Little Foundation to enhance the physical plant, increasing enrollment from 60 to 250 students. He is currently R.T. Hudson School Board Chair and serves on the Northeastern Conference 12 Board. Ever learning and coaching, Elliot enjoys cycling. He believes Adventist education represents the greatest opportunity for the church's survival, and most importantly, the greatest opportunity for the church to fulfill the mandate to teach children to observe all things Jehovah has commanded until the end of the world. Pollyanna Prosper Barnes is a native of the beautiful island of Haiti. She's a pastor's daughter and pastor's wife. She is a product of Adventist education and is a committed agent of transformation in the lives of people and has expertly impacted various communities for more than 25 years. Dr. Barnes employs her skills gained from her undergraduate and graduate degrees in French, behavioral science, reading education, and pastoral studies from Andrews University, Alabama A&M University, and Oakwood University, from her Doctor of Philosophy degree in Curriculum and Instruction from Andrews University, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in Pastoral Care and Counseling. She is a career educator and has worked in educational institutions from teaching elementary school through graduate and doctoral professorship, and on to presiding as superintendent of schools of the Northeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Being a teacher at heart, Dr. Pollyanna is an expert at using anecdotes and illustrations to teach listeners to practice practical applications of multifaceted lessons. Such skills are vividly illustrated in her books, In the Name of My Father, a book highlighting lessons learned from her father, and Speak Your World, her newest book highlighting our divine power to create the desires of our heart. Blending her educational and professional backgrounds with her personal passion, Dr. Barnes has metamorphosed from classroom teacher to Christian relationship educator and coach to author who opens a space for self-analysis, understanding, and commitment. She provides empowerment by educating, coaching, and training people in developing and maintaining effectiveness in all relationships. Pollyanna is married to her college sweetheart, Baldwin Barnes, who pastors the Elam Church in Brooklyn, New York. They are blessed with 3 adult children. She currently serves as the interim superintendent of schools for the Northeastern Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. Dr. Pollyanna Prosper Barnes has vowed to be God's transforming agent, invigorating the families and individuals of the world, causing more love, more fulfillment, more satisfaction, and more joy for everyone. Dr. Sandra Herdin hails from the beautiful island of Key West, Florida. Dr. Herdin is a trailblazer. As the first African-American female superintendent of schools in the Northeastern Conference, Atlantic Union, Office of Regional Conferences, and the North American Division of Seventh-day Adventists. She currently serves in the New York State Education Department as Bureau Chief of School Improvement. She coordinates, supports, and services with field support staff to offer low-achieving schools options in best practices, instructional improvement, professional development, administration, and leadership development. Dr. Herdin is a proud alumna of Oakwood College, now Oakwood University, Michigan State University, and Teachers College with Columbia University. She is a mother of 2 daughters, Erica and Elena, and with grandchildren, Langston, Edmund, and Annabella. She was married to the late Pastor Edward Herdin, who served as the beloved Bible teacher at Northeastern Academy for over 40 years. Dr. Herdin is unwavering and unbowed in her belief and support of Seventh-day Adventist Christian education. Dr. Rory Richards Usher was born in Costa Rica, Central America. Dr. Usher is an educator for over 30 years. She has worked in Latin America, the Caribbean, the United States of America. She is passionate about working with developing minds and helping them develop dormant abilities and inner strength potentials to succeed in life. She is noted for her care, loving, compassionate strength, and determination to pull the best out of people. She's a very successful professional leader who seeks to encourage excellence in every aspect. She's always encouraging and finding ways to incorporate her surrounding community to be connected in the source of life in order to find wisdom. Dr. Usher is currently serving as the principal of the Linden Seventh-day Adventist School located in Laurelton, New York, a private Christian school that focuses on students' emotional, intellectual, spiritual, and physical development, and providing adequate resources to enable student success. She is a stickler for holistic education that transforms students into the best versions of themselves. In addition to being an educator, Dr. Usher sits on the board of directors and is an active member and a professional facilitator for the For Real Women International Organization for over 15 years. She is married to Dr. Anthony Usher, and together they have 3 young adult professionals.
Give them a hand. Thank you very much. At this moment, we're going to ask each of our panelists to give us an impact statement about Adventist Christian education. So we will begin with Dr. Sandra Herdin.
Today is Sunday, February 27th, 2022. The day before the end of Black History Month for this year. It's that time of year when widespread attention is given to the recounting of the trials, triumphs, and successes of people of African descent. And of course, there have been tremendous strides over the years. However, the data reveals that there are still inequities in health, housing, and education for people of color. Education was, is, and always will be the bedrock for our people. In an earlier time, the streets of America were drenched with the blood of our people who gave their lives to be free and educated. Learning to read and write was as precious as the crown jewels. Our own Northeastern Academy falls within some of that time period. Now it is 102 years old. It was established as a school for colored children, and that's the way it's written in the Gleaner. It was established as a school for colored children in 1920 in Harlem, New York, by the Greater New York
because regional conferences had not been established until the mid-40s. So we are here. This gathering is not just an event or a one-time moment in time. Some may see this gathering as Education in Northeastern Conference as being at the crossroads, a crisis, an SOS, save our schools, an emergency alert. How did we get here? Thank you for asking the question. Throughout the symposium, you will hear a plethora of reasons and assumptions regarding our educational program. Caution, don't confuse a symptom with root causes. For example, low enrollment is probably a symptom of something and not the root cause. I want you to know that I am a firm believer in Seventh-day Adventist Christian education, and I am also a customer. My daughters graduated from Westchester Area School and Northeastern Academy. 2 grandchildren are students at Oakview Prep, and my grandson is a sophomore business major at Oakwood University. I believe Seventh-day Adventist education matters. Why? The program of education supports our distinct Adventist identity and beliefs, academic and spiritual development, not academic or and. It's A-N-D. It provides for us as Adventists a workforce. It couples education and redemption. Character is the only thing we're leaving here with. Character, it's the only thing. Evangelism partnership, we probably will hear more about that. So knowing, doing, and being is that triad of home, of school, of church. Yes, we have enrollment challenges facing us right now. However, all is not lost. God is still in control in the affairs of mankind. We have a unique opportunity to change the narrative. I listened recently to a DuPont Park alumni affairs discussion. One thing stood out with me. All of the people who were speaking, they said something. They said they were all in it. When they referred to they were all in it, it meant everybody in the church community were a part of what was happening in the schools in a positive way. They were all in it. So to take something from the 3 Musketeers, all for one and one for all. So as our ancestors persevered in their quest for freedom, we too must persevere to keep Black schools, our Black schools, open to provide quality education and preparation for now and for eternity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Herndon. Let's give her a hand. And now we continue with Dr. Rory Richards, Usher.
Greetings to all. My philosophy and Christian Adventist education stems from Mark chapter 10 and verse 14. Suffer the little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of God. And he took them up in his arms and put his hands upon them and blessed them. My philosophy is that children are a gift from God, and they are our treasures. God expects us as good stewards to give them the elite equilibrium education possible to develop their minds to function in the capacity to make a difference in this world. Adventist education costs, but it pays because of its holistic branding. And our children deserves to be taught by men and women who will make a mark on their minds. The Bible says that Jesus took up the little children in his arms and blessed them. There are three great blessings that Jesus will give our children when they attend to our schools. Blessing number one, they will be prepared for service for now and eternity through a series of spiritual, rigorous academics, recreational activities, and community outreach. Our teachers are committed and dedicated by modeling to help students develop new attitudes, life skills, character, love, values, compassion, and a sense of loyalty, respect for God and man, his creation and his church, preparing them for service in this life and for eternity. Thus, they will be blessed and acquire the necessary tools to face the challenges of this world as they make their way to God's kingdom. Blessing number two, they will be exposed to a spiritual encounter. I believe that every child who walks through our doors should have a fair opportunity to experience a spiritual encounter with God through their course of study. Our curriculum encompasses not only the academics, but also emphasizes and focuses on developing the students' physical, mental, and spiritual powers through the integration of faith in every subject. Such educational system provides a holistic educational equilibrium that will have a lasting effect on the students' minds and separates us from the gifted schools, the charter schools, the public schools, and even some of our other private schools. Blessings number three, they will be safe. If on earth our education system can provide our students a place where they feel as if they belong and are allowed ample room for them to feel safe, to tell their story and listen to God's story, I am confident that the God we serve will provide a place for them in this earth made new where they will be safe forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usher. Let's give her a hand. And now, Dr. Poliana Prosper Barnes.
Good morning, everyone. We are happy to be here. Last night, my husband forwarded me a 3-minute video that caused me to completely change my statement for this morning. The video was about a Catholic school in London made up of minority students that was on the list of failing schools. In 2014, that school was languishing at the bottom of the education rankings and in one of the most deprived boroughs in the United Kingdom. In 8 years, the school went from failing from UK's low performance list to a success story, from the worst to the #1 primary school in Britain. The principal, Angela Moore, a Jamaican born, said of her students and community, "We need to realize that we are not normal. Jamaicans," because it was a school in the Jamaican community, "Jamaicans are superhumans." I was blown away by that statement and decided to just delete everything that I had written and share this with you. We have an educational system that is second to none. Research has displayed the superiority of our curriculum. Data have confirmed our levels of achievement. School records have registered our continuous soul-winning success. The element that is missing is belief. Belief, that crucial element which confirms that we are engaged in a business that takes children from 3 or 4 years of age to adulthood and transforms them into well-rounded, God-like beings prepared to impact the world in their own way. Belief that we are not normal, that we are superhumans. Can you imagine that our system, what our system would look like if all its stakeholders, administrators, pastors, educators, parents, students, and church members believe that this education system is God-ordained to provide quality education to our children, building their heads, hearts, and hands, shaping them to live productively in this world and prepared to the world to come. Can you imagine if we believe that our children, your students, were not normal, were superhumans? Can you see them walking down the halls of our schools, in our churches, in our homes, knowing and feeling like princes and princesses representing divinity? Nothing could stop them. Nothing could stop us from achieving any heights we can dream of. We have been embracing the idea in general society that we are less than, while data evidences our superiority. It pains me to hear pastors, leaders, and church members search for public schools and other private schools to register their children, thinking that they are better than the Adventist education system. We are not normal. We are extraordinary. Yes, we have some work to do in raising standards and raising outcomes. That is why we are here today. But we need to raise our children's self-esteem, self-image, self-worth, and self-confidence. But if we don't believe we can, then we will have exactly what we speak. We must believe that we can. As Ellen White says in True Education, higher than the highest human thought can reach is God's ideal for his children. Godliness, godlikeness is the goal to be reached. To reach the heights that God envisions in us, we must believe first, declare it, infuse it with passion and commitment.
Amen.
Then put action to it.
Thank you very much.
Adventist education is our best kept secret. Let's begin to tap this gift that God has placed in our hands and let's support it. And I want to say this. I want to express my gratitude and commendation to the Northeastern Conference administrators, and to our fearless leader, Dr. Abraham J. Jules, for starting meaningful conversations that will affect our educational system. This initiative brings a ray of hope that hopefully will reignite Adventist education at the Northeastern Conference. We are supernatural because of our connection with Jesus.
Thank you.
Do you believe?
Thank you very much, Dr. Barnes. And now, Professor and Coach, Elliot Phipps.
Good afternoon, Mr. Moderator and guests that are here and those that are viewing online, and to the educators that I am so graced to be able to sit beside this morning. My philosophy and vision for education are the same, but it starts with a text, Jeremiah 13 and verse 20. Where is the flock that was given thee, thy beautiful flock? That is what I see as my personal responsibility every day. I am an ambassador for the children of God to be taught by God and God alone. When you look back to the year 1983, at the time Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States, he commissioned a study that led to a declaration based on a document that said the rising tide of mediocrity. And it begins this way. If an unfriendly foreign power had attempted to impose on America the mediocre educational performance that exists today, we might well have viewed it as an act of war. As it stands, we have allowed this to happen to ourselves. The future of education and the future of Adventism are intrinsically linked. Without Adventist education, there is no Adventism. I want to say that again because it seems that it's something that we have somehow lost in translation. The future of Adventism and the future of education in Adventism are the same. Ellen White expressed it the same way, stating the same sentiment that the work of redemption and the work of education are one. It's how she begins the book Education. The vast majority of Ellen White's visions, 10 years before the organization of the church, 10 years before the organization of the church, covered three themes that remained the persistent focus of her work for her lifetime. Those three things are doctrine, medical ministry, and education. All of her visions were focused on those three things, and they're not in a priority order. Adventist education as a whole has somehow become a reflection of the world. And listening to Dr. Barnes and her comments, really, we already know that God has given us the ideal, the best, the top, whatever superlative you could put to it is what the system of education that was handed down to us. What is lacking is our belief in understanding and reminding ourselves that that has always been true. It's not something that we even need to have to prove. It is actually just a simple fact. Our mission in its simplest form is to restore the image of the Creator in every child. Not only Seventh-day Adventist children, not only minority children, not only poor children, not only privileged children, but every single child. For if we restore the image of the Creator in every child, that image will be there when they become an adult. This is the work of redemption. This is the work of the church. This is the work of the home. This is the work of the school. How do I know? Because our Messiah gave us this commission when he left us here to perform the work with him. It is demonstrated in providing value-based education and quality-based education, developing character for citizenship in the present and character for citizenship in eternity. The alternative is entrusting the future of the Adventist church to the world. And the world has a definitive agenda. While you think that agenda is determined by the courses you select, in actuality, is the agenda built and designed to indoctrinate the mind of our children, to accept not only an accidental existence from an unspecified event 13.8 billion years ago, but also an existence dedicated to material gain and consumerism, a caste and socioeconomical status by conscription, a gender and sexual orientation of your choice from the buffet, an entitlement-based value system. Is that really what we want for children who are being brought up to live in eternity? I would say not. It is either a declaration of war or deep state espionage if we allow it to continue that way. The result would be the same in either case. The system, I will repeat, is not designed to develop in our children the best. And when I say the system, I'm not talking about the Adventist system. I'm talking about any alternative to Adventist education. How do I know? In the book, White Rage, it states that it's a reminder to facts that we should know. In 1954, the Brown versus Board of Education led to, in 1959, Prince Edward County, Virginia, closed the entire system to prevent Black children from attending school with their white children. Those schools remained closed for 5 years. It wasn't until the Quakers helped to establish a free school for Blacks in 1960 that that our children were able to be educated. Is the system designed for me? Absolutely not. In my closing, I would just say this. Envision with me a school that is a learning community where children come at every age to learn by doing. They have their hands involved in the work so that learning is not rote, but it comes from actually having your hands involved, which makes learning sticky. To Dr. Keto's point, mirror neurons is something that happens even just by watching someone else play a piano. Your neurons fire the same way as if you were actually playing. There's so much more that I could say. I will end on saying that it also leads to our critical thinking, something that the system is determined to erase so that we can't make decisions based on analyzing a situation, but based on how they want you to think. Let's just focus on developing the system that we already have into the best that it can be. God is not about mediocrity, neither should we be.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand. So we want to remind the audience that is watching, I can see my tech team has brought up the live feed of the QR code on my phone. Thank you, Tech. So I can see the questions that are coming in. If you have not done so yet, please scan the QR code. And I'm going to ask the tech team to put up that QR code again on the screen so that our participants may be able to scan in and get into the conversation, because this is not a monologue, it is a dialogue. We are having a conversation. So here it is. Here are the first poll questions that we have for the audience. The first poll question that we have for the audience. And I want you to go into the QR code section and I want you to vote on the answer to this question. Here is the question. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not important and 5 being extremely important, how do you rank Adventist Christian education at the elementary level? I see some votes are coming in. So I repeat that question again. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not important and 5 being extremely important, how do you rank Adventist Christian education at the elementary level. And when we say how do you rank it, we're asking how do you rank it in importance for the students that are being serviced? How do you rank it? So far, we see that those who have voted, we see that in the audience that are watching us, 78% of you say that it is extremely important. And votes are still coming in, but it seems like the extremely important has it at this moment. Now, question number 2 for the audience. Question number 2, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not important and 5 being extremely important. How do you rank Adventist Christian education at the secondary level? Same question, but for the secondary level. And we see the votes are coming in at this time, so you can cast your vote if you're just joining us on this broadcast. We want to ask you to please scan in on the QR code so that you can be a part of this conversation today. So, from the audience that is watching us, we see that the numbers are changing, but roughly 68% of our viewing audience believes that education, Adventist Christian education at the secondary level, is extremely important. And then I have the third poll question for you. It's exactly the same question, but a different level of education. It says, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not important and 5 being extremely important, how do you rank Adventist education at the college and university level? How do you rank it in importance at the college and university level? So according to our audience, roughly 64% believes that it is extremely important. So let's bring in our panelists here and start having some dialogue on this. I would like us to reflect for a little bit on the topic of a unified strategy. A unified strategy. Much have been said today about the fact that a lot of people are not informed. I was watching some of the YouTube feed, and it says that many people did not know about some of the studies that Dr. Keto cited. So let me ask this question to our panelists. What should a unified strategy look like in our education system? I.e., what should it look like in assessment? What should it look like in benchmarks? What should it look like in school environment? What should it look like in consistency in goals throughout the system, etc.? Who would like to tackle this question? Dr. Herndon. It's on.
Yeah, well, I think that embedded in your question are some of the answers.
Can we get the mics on, please? Unmute.
Yeah, I think in some of your questions, the answers are already there.
Yes.
You kind of ticked off some of the areas of curriculum, of assessment, strategy, and so forth. So when you're looking at the wholeness, of a program for a school, our Adventist schools have a whole program. Dr. Barnes will probably mention that. We're part of the North American division, and we have a program that is prescribed in a way by them. So it encompasses assessments at regular intervals. We have an accreditation process that is used to measure what is going on in the schools every 5 or 6 years there's an assessment that's going on. But overall, when you're looking at a unified strategy, that's one part of the unified strategy. But individual schools, it's not really one size fits all. There are some variabilities that go on in the school as far as curriculum and curriculum offerings. And as we look at the wholeness of the child, then part of our unified strategy includes the heart, the hand, the mind, and so forth. So our schools are recognized by, let's say in this case, New York State. There's a word that's the use substantial equivalency. That means that our program of education, which means we have a program of education, it is substantially equivalent to what is also offered in New York State schools.
Thank you very much. In continuing on this topic of unified strategy, when we were having some preliminary conversations, Professor Phipps, you had mentioned something concerning. You had mentioned something. Need another mic. The batteries are on. Yes, Professor Phipps, you had mentioned something concerning experiential learning, and I think you're doing some research on that right now. Would that be something that could be added to our unified strategy?
Yes, I would actually say absolutely. And by experiential learning, can be more specific about how I can envision this. And it's not that this is just my own conceptual idea. There are studies that prove that this methodology truly works. But guess what? It's also what was prescribed in the book Education. So what am I talking about? All of our schools should engage our children in learning by actual labor even. Now, of course, that puts fear into people, right? I'm suggesting that we put our children to work. What I'm suggesting is that every child should learn through vocation, being able to use their hands, which helps them to discover what their real capabilities and propensities are. What it means is that every child doesn't have the same path to what their ultimate career objectives will be and where they'll be successful. So trying to channel every child down the same path is not going to be the best for the individual child. And God is about individuals. So what would I see? How about a school where we engage with agriculture? So the first grade maybe is working on just planting seeds, but the third graders are looking at how much produce can we get from this amount of land. The fifth grade and sixth grade maybe are working on, well, now that we know that we will have the produce of oranges and basil, how can we market that? I'll end that concept by saying this. 46% of the nation's GDP comes from small businesses. And yet, we don't really do anything that focuses on getting our children to think entrepreneurially. So we are closing off one whole aspect of really an avenue that most people, and what does that do? Small businesses produce jobs. So that puts us in a situation to where now we have a produce that we can actually sell, and it creates the opportunity for jobs at the same time. So that's what I mean when I talk about a community of learning, where all the way through our entire system, there's connectivity. And that's a new theory of learning right now, connectivism, about how we learn socially in groups as opposed to individually.
So I would like to bring the audience in here and continuing with the same theme of unified strategy. Several viewers are inquiring the following, and I'm going to throw this question for Dr. Usher and Dr. Barnes, if you can address this. How can I, learn about the specific needs of a school or child in Adventist education. I would love to donate, but I want to give to a specific project or student in need.
In order to find out about a specific need or project from our schools, you would want to contact the school in your community. Whatever Adventist school that is close to you, you may want to contact the principal of that school and acquaint yourself with the school. Or, talk to the education office to find out about some of the projects that are taking place in our different schools, and whichever would interest you, then you would, donate your time, talent, and resources to that school. That's what I would suggest.
And we are located at 137 01228th Street, Laurelton, New York.
Thank you very much. So now, in continuing with the concept of unified strategy, what should we consider when selecting personnel for our schools?
So, let me first say that, as Dr. Herdin mentioned before, that we do have a unified strategy in our goals and mission and curriculum standards. All those are designed through the North American division, and all our schools are actually implementing all of those. I think the area where there is a need for unification would be in the co-curricular area. So I suppose we will talk more of that in later on. So your question about selection of personnel of our schools, to unify a strategy would be to actually create a list of standards, and expectations. What is it that we are looking for based on the needs of our schools? And when we have a unified system, then we can actually have a standardized list of regiments, things that we use to select our personnel. One thing that I will add to it is that we have not been operating from that point of view. We have actually been operating from survival. Because we don't have a great selection of personnel to choose from. And when we look at our universities now, colleges and universities, the enrollment in education is low. I remember one year, some years ago, when I was superintendent, every year, starting from September, we would go to the colleges and university superintendents. They would give us a date. All the schools would give us specific dates where they would showcase their seniors for us to interview and hire for the following year. And we begin early part of the school year. And I remember one year we went in one school. There was literally one senior. And you should have seen all of us superintendents trying to grab onto that teacher, that future teacher, in order, to secure a product of our schools. So we resort, because of lack of graduates, education graduates from our schools, we resort to selecting those that we can find.
So what I'm hearing is that we have a pool selection that is limited.
That's correct.
So Professor Phipps, as you think about that question, then I would add this question: what would be a good strategy then for recruitment?
So one
Talent
of the things
recruitment, that
that
is.
I've considered is, and because Dr. Barnes had talked before about the lack of being able to recruit, but we need to be able to offer some incentives. If you think about being in Northeastern, not talking about Northeastern Conference, living in the North Atlantic states is economically a challenge. So what about if we approached some of our young people while they're headed to college with the idea that if they're willing to devote X number of years back to the conference in terms of teaching in the conference, that in return, we would subsidize their education in some way. Maybe it's not just, and we do that for some pastors, I understand. So, and maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be directly in tuition, but what about us providing a way for them to have housing that is more affordable when they're living here? Money is money. It doesn't matter which pocket it comes from, right? So we can provide incentives, and then that gives us a way of keeping an eye on the best talent that we want to recruit, and therefore give them those opportunities. It's the same way. I don't really like to use a sports analogy, but in essence, that is what a college does when it's wanting to recruit people for their sports teams, as a matter of fact.
So what I'm hearing is, and I'm going to bring you in, Dr. Usher and Dr. Herndon. So what I'm hearing is that our conferences need to be working closely with our universities. Dr.
Yes,
Usher.
and in addition to what Professor said, I think one of the things that we can add also to our system is job fairs for teachers.
Dr. Barnes said, less interest in the teaching field. I've heard the same thing about the pastoral area also, but in teaching. And I think that it's important, maybe not just at college level, but when middle school, at least start off younger within our schools. You talk about having some extra activities then maybe we could have those kind of career fairs, job fairs, or something that will begin to already get into the heads of our youngsters' careers. And so have career offerings and ideas, have people come in and talk to them so they can begin to think of a career in teaching early. When the time to get in 11th and 12th grade, it's kind of late. So I think it's important, and that's important to do that, to start much earlier in getting interest in our school children in the teaching area, and then also be very careful as to whom we're putting in front of the children. Because they're Adventists, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the right person to be in that position.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Richards.
Before you make that statement, I want to engage the audience for a little bit, and then while they're voting, I'll allow you to make that statement. So here's the question I have for you, audience, and I want you to vote on this. Do you believe that all the school-age children in our churches should be enrolled in our schools? The answer is yes or no. You can start voting now. Those of you who entered the QR code room. Yes.
Yes, I'd like to say that in spite of the dearth of graduates from our schools for the education system, I really believe that every one of our teachers was sent by God. I do not want in any way undermine the quality of teachers that we have and the hard work that they're doing. And so even though we don't have many students graduating from our schools, but I tell you, sometimes I know that it's God who sends them through our doors or have them send their resumes, and they perform very well. So, I really want to encourage our teachers and let them know that the Lord is working through you. You're doing a fine job with these students, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. And we have, can my tech team put up the response to that question? There you have it. 86% of our viewing audience believe that all of our children should be enrolled in our schools. So from the sample of our viewing audience, they do believe. So I hope today, as we have this conversation, we can come up with some ideas, and you, audience, can share with us some ideas that can make that happen, translate from desire to actual action. Here is the next question I have for the audience. Do you believe Adventist Christian education has an edge over public school or other educational systems? Yes or no? Do you believe that Adventist Christian education has an edge over public school or other educational systems? Yes or no? And now, from the audience also, there is a commentary that is saying to us, why is it that we have such a low emphasis within our system on early childhood education?
Well, that was. Right now, it is highly emphasized. The administration has hired an assistant superintendent for early childhood education, an expert, to ensure that all our schools have early childhood, the early stages, preschool, because that's the feeder to our schools. And so we have Linden School and the Brockton School in Massachusetts, Linden School in Queens, who have over 100 students in their early childhood center. And so those schools are always filled with students. And so when we looked at enrollment, we realized that the lower grades enrollment was very low. And we realized that if we don't do something about early childhood, our schools will not exist for long. And so the former administration had hired our Dr. Gillian Joseph, who is an expert in early childhood and has a plan to have a unified strategy for the early childhood program.
So, for my online audience, I want you to go again into the comment section and the QR code, and I want you to name 3 co-curricular subjects or activities you believe should be offered in Adventist elementary and secondary schools. Co-curricular subjects and activities are subjects that are not a part of the core curricular that is coming from the North American division, but are other aligned subjects that would help to pursue the same goals that our core curriculum has. So please go in there and suggest 3 subjects or activities that you believe should be considered. And also, we want to let the audience here present to know that there are 3 mics set up in the front, that if you also have an answer for any of these questions, that you can come to the mic and provide them. So the same question to our panelists. Yes, while we fix Professor Phipps' mic, there is a comment here and this mic right here by my left. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for the symposium. My name is Dwayne Smith, and I have been a music education teacher in the Board of Ed for about 20 odd years. Now, I am a person who believes research has shown that the arts play a huge part in the development of students' education and overall achievement. And I would like to know, because I would like to somehow be a part of making the arts important in our schools. And so I would like to know, what is your opinion about having things like dance, having things like drama, having things like music, instrumental music, or visual art? How important do you see that in playing a role in helping our children to become a well-rounded educationally as well as spiritually?
I'm going to let Dr. Usher answer that question, because the Linden School actually has a very good example in that situation. Go ahead, Dr. Usher.
Yes. In the capacity of the arts, we have a mass choir, which the entire school is part of the choir. We also have a drama team. We do praise dance, which is for the deaf ministry. We also, in the line of the arts, we also do drum corps, the charms. We also have the orchestra in terms of the music department. And also, not only that, we also implemented as part of the curriculum as well, we also implemented arts and crafts for the early childhood. And for grades 3 to 5, we also have canvas painting. And from 6 through 8, we do fashion designing. That has to do, have the kids designing, because they're in the Seventh-day Adventist school, so they're learning how to design their clothing that would be modest. So that is in the part of the arts that we have. We call this super electives. And also in the sports area, we consider also part of the arts, because since our educational system reinforces the health, we have the kids be part of our basketball team, and we are looking in the future to also implement. We had it before COVID-19 came in, so we'll continue with that with the soccer team.
Thank you very much.
I would say that in all our schools, music is implemented, choirs, and there are some schools that also have orchestra or bands. So music is the area that I would say that's unified more than anything else.
Any other area. So I want to encourage the audience present here and those who are watching us online. This is your opportunity to ask any question that you might have. Please feel free to either step up to the mic here. Those who are present or those who are watching us online, you can ask your question as well through the QR code. So I have some questions here from the online members. Yes, before I get to the online members, let me get to you. Yes.
Okay, good morning. My name is Lorraine Boston, and I am a New York City public school teacher. It's more than a question. I've been listening. I've heard this morning some important words. I heard equity. I heard holistic. I heard inclusion. I heard project-based learning. And project-based learning, this conversation has been going on in most schools because we all have suffered loss of students, not just our Adventist schools. When we are at a cabinet meeting, how are we building? I was happy to come here to this forum this morning because I'm listening for key things that would help to rebuild our Adventist school. I haven't heard them as much. We are going around the key components. Where are our parents? We needed a parent on the panel. Education is not done at the top. It's done by the people who are in the trenches. So when we think of equity, how is equity showing up in our curriculum? That's a question I have. We do have standards and curriculums, but is it meeting the need of the students that we are servicing? How are we reaching out to the parents? This is a young church. My daughter has a child. We tried the Adventist school. All of her friends now are in their 30s and their children are young. How are we reaching those? If we are still coming with philosophies, with resources from 1920 and 80, and this is 2022, and we have a large population of special needs students, especially in our Adventist school. When the gentleman spoke about hands-on learning, it's the project base. That's what we need. With the arts, with the projects, that's how we advertise and market ourselves. And that's how we're going to get back those younger parents to put their children in there. The money is not the problem. It's what we're offering and how we're offering it. And I am willing. We have several educators in our churches that have gone through this and have seen changes and are sitting on cabinet meetings in our schools and understand how that change would come. I am willing to volunteer my time to help with that.
Thank you very much. We would like to get the information from this teacher here who has volunteered her time, because those are the kind of responses that we need, because we will make this happen, all of us together, working together as one. So, as we're talking about this, The teacher that just spoke, she spoke about equity, etc., etc. And one of the things that we know that have, you know what? Let me allow Dr. Kido, because Dr. Kido has been with us. Let me allow Dr. Kido to react to what you just heard. Dr. Kido, can you react to what this teacher just mentioned in her comments?
Regarding equity or regarding project-based learning? Which aspect, Dr. Richards?
All right, while we're fixing Dr. Kido's audio, I'm going to take the speaker on the mic on my right.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for doing this symposium. I speak as an educator as well as a parent who had 2 children who attended Adventist school in Northeastern. And, you know, just a lot of things that I'm thinking about. First of all, just to piggyback off of the sister who spoke just now, the teacher. One of the things that I find a little frustrating is that there are a lot of wonderful things in our Adventist schools, but nobody knows about them. Our promotion has been lackluster. I mean, if you think about this symposium and the promotion for the symposium itself, you know, I think is representative of the kinds of missed opportunities that we've had. When my children attended the Linden SDA school, science fair project time. The science fair projects that the children produced were amazing. And I would constantly ask, you know, why are we packing up these projects, taking them to churches, letting churches see what's being done? I mean, the question that was asked before about the arts in Adventist schools, I mean, really, that shows that there is a lack of knowledge of what is going on in our schools. And I do think that for too long, we've had this attitude that, you know, we read a few Ellen White quotes and then expect people to just send their children. Or we've had an attitude where if parents ask too many questions, then, you know, then we take offense. You know, as Mr. Monroe is here, the home and school director from Linden, one of the common questions and perceptions among the parents was that, well, you know, I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want the teacher to get back at my child. Or I don't want, you know, that was the pervasive feeling where people were afraid. And as the sister just brought up, the fact that parents are not a part of the panel, the fact that parents are not a part of this discussion. I think for too long, parents are seen as a part of the problem. But I believe that, Pollyanna, you really hit the nail on the head when you spoke about belief. Because if people believe that the schools are quality and believe that the schools are safe, then people will send their children. And the Linden daycare is a clear example of that, where the Linden daycare is the best kept secret in Northeastern. When my children attended the Linden daycare, they had over 90 students attending the daycare, a wait list that is a mile long, and parents were paying $500 a month to send their children there. Preschool and kindergarten are free in New York City, but parents were willing to pay $500 a month to send their children because they believed that they were getting quality and they believed that their children were safe. We all believed it. And the year that my son now was to go from the Linden daycare up to the elementary school, everybody was nervous because that just, the perception again, and the belief was that the quality of education was uneven at best. And that year was the year when Miss Brathwaite moved from the daycare to first grade at Linden. And nearly everyone kept their children at Linden because of the fact that we perceived and we knew, we saw the evidence that our children were learning. And the children who did not stay in Adventist school and who left the Linden daycare, many of those children went into gifted and talented programs in New York City public schools. But many people don't know this because somewhere along the line, someone was able to take control of the narrative and put out there that the schools are no good. But unfortunately, those who are in positions to be able to change that narrative did not take that opportunity. Because again, when questions are asked, we're offended. But I have learned now shifting from my parent role to my role now as I'm a principal in New York City Public School. And my school, where I am a principal, it is, when I took over the school, 6% proficiency in math, 24% proficiency in ELA. The school had bottomed out completely. Violence like you've never seen, and thank God I didn't even have to see it. When I first came into the school, the district was thinking about shutting down the school because of the lack of safety. The fighting was constant, and books and laptops and what have you thrown through windows, and kids running wild. I'm talking about a middle school, grades 6 through 8, in Laurelton, Queens. I'm not talking about the South Bronx or East Flatbush where I grew up, but I'm talking about Laurelton, Queens. But I have been able to help change that narrative and change that perception by talking to parents, engaging parents, allowing parents to ask me hard questions. So if I don't have the answer, I have to say to the parent, well, you know what? I don't have the answer, but let's work together to figure this out. And, by God's grace, and there are parents now whose children are in my school, parents who are sitting right here in this same auditorium. And I'm not saying the name of the school because I'm not trying to advertise the school. I want our children to go to Linden and to go to these others. I want our children to be in the Adventist schools. And our parents want our children to be in the Adventist schools. And our parents will pay for it if they believe they're receiving quality. And it can be done. So, what Professor Phipps has been talking about, in the DOE, we call it CTE, Career Technical Education. And all of this, if we actually sit down and read the NED education plan, which I did when my children were going to start school, it's all there. We don't have to do anything new, anything different. The poll about robotics and all of that other stuff, the Linden School has that through STEAM and all of this. However, how are we promoting this? How are we promoting this? And what are we doing to make sure that the children remain central? Because if we put the adults and the needs of the adults as primary, then that's how we end up sitting here. Because if parents are not able to ask questions, if parents aren't able to raise concerns about how their children are treated, how their children are spoken to, the professor from La Sierra had spoken about character. Character is indeed important. Developing the character of the child, but also the character of the adults. Because I'm not going to go into the long story, but my children, I pulled my children out for 1 year because of some character issues that I found with the adults. My children at this time are not attending Adventist High School because of a character issue regarding a leader, not in Northeastern, okay? I wish my children could have gone to Northeastern. I can't find Northeastern Academy. I don't know where Northeastern Academy is, and half of our constituents don't know where Northeastern Academy is. But there's so many things to unravel, and I know I'm saying a lot, but Pollyanna, you hit it. Belief. We have it all, but let's now execute it. Let's implement it, and let's include the parents. And if the parents perceive quality, they will pay for it.
Thank you very much for your comment. I heard two speakers have spoken that there's a perception that the parents are not included in this discussion. Well, I want to apologize if that perception has been gone out to you, but this forum is for you parents and everyone to be a part of this conversation. So we want to hear from you, definitely. And Professor Phipps is going to react to some of what has been said, and then I'm going to read some of the comments that are coming in online. Yes. I'm not sure if our audio is fixed yet, so let's do that.
Sure. So just a couple of things, and I want to also thank both of the ladies who came and spoke so passionately about the views, which I tend to agree with as well. Adventism overall is like a secret society. So I'm not going to speak for anyone else's church. I can tell you that my church sits in a prominent space in Manhattan, and yet when sometimes even on Wednesday night, we enter the church through the side door. So people wouldn't even know that there's something going on there. Now, why am I saying? I'm not trying to make a condemnation or be critical in any way. I'm saying that we know we've just somewhat taken for granted the messaging that goes along with who we actually are and what we actually have. I can say this pretty strongly because most of my career life I've been in marketing and customer service. So the perspective has to come from us. Now I'm gonna put it out there and say that because of how our church is structured, one thing that would start us off down that track, our president has already started to do just by getting us organized in this fashion for this forum today. Equally so, if Dr. Jules collects his ministers tomorrow and says that education is the driving force and platform that will be what Northeastern Conference is about, it will start happening the moment that he says it. Because that's what I've learned, the type of leader that he is, but it's also a reflection of the type of people that Adventists are. We respond to what the minister says and drives. And if so very simply, if that becomes what our mantra is, and we have to recognize that we didn't get here in a moment, so it's going to take a while to develop momentum to the point where people become, Dr. Barnes, believers again, right? It's something that we've somewhat lost.
Thank you. We'll take the comment from the gentleman on the mic on the right.
Thank you very much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rory Richards, and I have a vested interest in Adventist education as the chairman of Bethel Elementary School Board. I'm also an educator for life. I have been privileged to be an educator at the early childhood, the secondary, and now the higher education level. And one of the things that has been established here is that Adventist education is second to none. The curriculum is holistic, and of course we are always growing to improve. But there's no question about the value of Adventist education, and there's no question about the readiness of the curriculum to provide the needs for our students and our families and our communities on the whole. I think where the critical problem exists, and a number of people have mentioned it, and Professor, you just spoke about it, is our marketing strategies that we use. Ma'am, you spoke about the symptom versus the problem. Again, we don't have a problem with curriculum. I can't see where we have a problem with curriculum. What we have a problem with is getting people to know about what we do. Let me give you an example. As a parent, one of the things I look for is whether or not this system, and I'm saying system now because that's how we should be looking at it, this system will educate my child from early childhood, from cradle to university. Now, we all know that Adventist education has one of the largest education systems in the world, in North America included. And we can educate our children from cradle to university. How comes our parents, the communities, are not hearing this? How comes they do not hear that when you send your child to Adventist schools and they go to high schools, they have a plethora of Adventist universities that they will get into because they are prepared for it? How comes we're not hearing that? These are marketing strategies that need to be used. How comes we're not hearing about small classroom sizes? Everybody else speaks about that. How comes we're not hearing about work-ready students? Everybody else hears about that. These are the things that they push for education institutions. That's one point on marketing. The other point is the critical nexus between evangelism and education. Why do we not speak about this more in our churches? From the pulpit, in the board meetings, in our department meetings. Evangelism and education are one. The Jesuits will tell you if you give them your child until the age of what, 12 it is, they have a Catholic for life. Well, give me your child as an Adventist, and I will train your child to serve God and be a productive citizen. Why is it that we're not hearing about this? And then I think also, from a structural standpoint, we need to look at our system, and you sort of brushed on it in the beginning, Dr. Richards, when you were asking about this holistic approach to our education. But we need to look at our system more than just an educational department. And I'm using the word system now because what that means is that you are going to put in place the structural tools that will enable your system to meet the needs of the entire population that it serves, not just Adventists, but also the LGBTQ communities. They need salvation. But also the Muslims, they need to hear about us. But also the people who are differently abled, they need to be able to be included in our outlook as a system. Then if we look at it as a system, our leadership structure will have to really evolve so that you can underpin this kind of growth that we want. And I guess the final point I wanted to make and also ask community relations. One of the things about education, Dr. Richards, is that education is able to shape and direct community activities and growth if it is properly promoted and properly integrated into the community. How are we going about ensuring that we develop this community relationship and ensuring that the community is integrally interwoven into whatever it is that we're doing? So Adventist education, and I really would like an answer for this, Adventist education is seen as the pivotal and impactful institution it is in our community.
Thank you
How
very
are
much,
we looking?
Brother Richards. Thank you very much for your comments. And we'd like to ask the following speakers to keep your comments succinct. We want to get everybody's voices, as much voices as possible, into this conversation. And I want to get to some of my online friends who are making comments, but we haven't been able to highlight them yet. But we have another person at the mic, mic number 2. Yes.
Thank you very much. I wanted to thank the panel for just giving your time and your experience to us and sharing where you've gone through and the things in which are important to you, which is Adventist education. I want to say something that I don't want to offend. However, as a millennial myself, I know and I recognize that it is my children that we are seeking to be placed into these schools. And in this, myself, my wife, we have long conversations as we discuss the importance of Adventist education. And yet, I think it's important to recognize in all things that this is not necessarily, I think, an education problem as much as it is a church problem. And that is the lack of representation. If you're trying to speak to my age group, it's important that my age group sits at the table. I would say, if I was sitting at the table, a couple of things. The first thing that I would mention is I think that the problem with us, not just in education, but in the church, is we're too busy competing against each other. That the problem then becomes things don't work. We don't even have, if I can just talk straight, because I'm a millennial and that's what we do, we talk straight. We don't even have the resources to do well in the establishment that we have, and yet we're competing against each other. In the city of New York, we have Northeastern Academy, we have Greater New York Academy. We're competing against each other. Why, in any business model, you recognize when there are problems, you tend to want to downsize, you pull in your resources, you find an opportunity for you to consolidate and do what's best to move the business along. Will there ever be any conversation with that? The ability for us to recognize that the model that we have may not necessarily work, an opportunity for us to bring in necessary minds for us to do the radical changes that might be beneficial for us to move forward, and ultimately for us to recognize that within ourselves we can do a lot in helping each other. The problem, it becomes there's this ideology when it comes to churches where we recognize that we're all doing the work of spreading the three angels message, but you need to come to my church to do it. And that's ultimately defeats the point. And I say this because there are other models of Adventist education happening around the country, from the DMV area in California and so on, where they don't necessarily model it the way we might still be doing it here in the Northeast, in that we are spreading our resources too thin. I think it's important for us, if we really want to see the adequate change for the generation moving forward, that we need to ask ourselves the question, is it about keeping the school for the school's sake, or doing the necessary conversation of moving Adventist education forward in New York City for the sake of where we are and the people that we're trying to reach?
Thank you so much for that comment, because that comment basically echoes a lot of what is showing up online. Someone was asking here online, they were saying, why is it that the schools in the West, the Adventist schools in the West, seem to be doing better than the Adventist schools in the Northeast? And I think Pastor Francois has just alluded to that they are willing to consolidate their resources than spreading themselves too thin. So I want to read some other comments here so that we can bring our online audience in. One comment said that there should have been young voices in the conversation. Someone has said that we need realistic evaluation. Someone has commented that that most of our SDA administrators and pastors are lacking marketing skills, hence they need to be taught. Then someone else says, we have a hidden gem in our SDA education system. And then one more before I go to this comment here in the house. Someone else here said, the SDA administrators don't need another responsibility added to their plates. They are people in the pews, parents, etc., with the skill sets to assist. We need to allow them room at the table. So this conversation is about that. We need all hands on deck, and we need people not to just point out what is going wrong, but be a part of the solution by saying, how can I help? Yes, my sister.
Good afternoon. My name is Damali Kane, and I am an Adventist educator through and through. I started at the Greater New York Academy, where I taught there for about 6 years, after which I moved on to, well, let me not lie. I started at Union Springs. I taught there for a year. I went to Greater New York Academy. I went to Pine Forge Academy, South Lancaster Academy, and this is where my story for now will end. I wanted to take this time to recognize the Adventist educators. I think it's easy for us to really look at the negatives and not take time to highlight the positives. I want to highlight the fact that throughout my tenure as an Adventist educator, I have seen countless students give their lives to Christ. I want to take the time to highlight the fact that throughout my time as an Adventist educator, I have seen children upon children go to schools that their minds cannot even fathom. As I stand in this place at this moment, I think of Mr. Laborde, who is sitting in the back, who has students, Deja Laborde, who I taught specifically, who is now at Mahari Medical School. I look at the young man who is on the camera right now, and I realize he is a product of Adventist education. Laurent. Sorry, long time. I'm still your favorite teacher. But there are so many students who we can look at now whose lives have been changed and impacted by what Adventist education has done. I think one of our biggest issues, not just in the Adventist education system, but in the church, is that we don't know how to let go. When we're talking about teachers or lack thereof, we don't take the time to realize that just as how educators, you have grown from a teacher to a principal to superintendent, such is happening with the millennials of our day. The reason why my story stops at South Lancaster Academy is because I realized that I love teaching religion, but I also can do more in the system. I wanted to be a principal. I had to find my own way of becoming a principal because I didn't have mentorship. So because of a lack of mentorship, I started to just reach out to a lot of people. And the random people that I reached out to, whether it be online, they sent me in directions where I garnered about $300,000 in debt from schools like Long Island University, where I was just trying to get into a program to be able to work. I say all this to say, if we're going to be looking at the bigger picture is not that we as millennials, we want to be teachers. The bigger picture is we as millennials, a lot of us have already trained to be teachers, and a lot of us have been working in the system forever. At this point in the life of a millennial, there needs to be mentorship. And the mentorship needs to lead to growth, progress, and change. Currently, I speak to you, I'm in a charter school system. Do I want to be there? Absolutely not. But I am there because mentorship was provided, and they're providing me an opportunity to continue to reach heights that I would not even begin to fathom or imagine. But day by day, as I stand in that classroom, as I stand in those leadership meetings, I think about the students whose lives were impacted when I was in Adventist school. I think about the Adventist students who are in these charter schools as well. And I try my best to be an Adventist who makes a difference. I don't come up here to try to brag, because I know sometimes that's what it might sound like. But I really want us as a church, you guys as a panel, to think intentionally about what Adventist education was for you when you were your age. Who was the one mentor in your life that made a difference? And whoever that person was for you, I pray to God that you be that for a millennial. Because, Pastor Richards, I see you putting up your mic.
Yes.
I want to say that there are a lot of millennials, there are a lot of young people who desire to send our children to Adventist education. It is a part of who we are. It is ingrained in our being. But if we continue to say things like special education we cannot afford, we are at a disservice. Please find it in your heart. And President Abraham Jules, I ask that you find it in the budget, an opportunity for the education department to be able to provide needs as mentorship and special education so that we can get all of our students into schools that would lead not just for now, but for eternity.
Thank you very much. Speaker on the other mic, please.
For the panelists who probably don't know me, Easton Marks. And I tend to brag about my credentials of having my daughters do K to 16, as I like to put it. And I've been a pastor in the New York area for 21 years, and I don't think there is a teacher I've met whom I haven't supported, and a principal I haven't supported, and a superintendent I haven't supported. So whatever remarks I make that sound critical, it's just made because I believe our system should be strong enough to endure criticism.
I'm sorry, Pastor Marks, I don't want to interrupt you, but I've received instruction from my production team that we need to give everyone 2 minutes to speak.
As a matter of fact, when the president was trying to tell you 2 minutes each, I thought he was warning me. But I'm going to make it in 2 minutes. I just wanted to preamble it that way because I found myself somewhat a victim of the misunderstanding when we have these candid conversations. And it is really not a nice feeling when you're seen as an opponent of that which you support. I don't quite understand the term rigorous as we use it describing our academic program, and I'm not an educator, so I don't understand it. I don't see it from my eyes when I look at what we are doing in our schools, the schools I've been associated with. And in my 21 years in New York, I've done 16 on school boards. I've not seen any school board seriously dream, vision, including the 2 academies in the New York City area. I've not seen any of them go on any retreat to do any kind of strategic long-term planning. And I'm staying on the school board issue because we talk about our personnel and our teachers are great, but if our boards are not great, I'm not sure we have enough in the system. And when I chair nominating committees and are looking for officers, that's when we do school board members. And it's when everybody has declined being on the school board, we end up taking whosoever will to be on the school board. And I am so sick and tired of being on those school boards that come out to school board meetings totally unprepared, totally should not be there, coming for some kind of an evening together. So those are the 2 issues. Please explain rigorous and explain for me if you mean that personnel includes school boards. Mr. Moderator, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we have Dr. Caldwood here on the other mic. And to just to say a word on that, yes, rigorous means everyone, the school board included. The school board is paramount and number 1. And that's one of the areas where we do need to have some serious reform. The role of the school board need to be more proactive and more active. so that our schools can be administered the way they should. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arlene Colwood, and I'm trying to make as many notes as I can today to kind of get a great picture of what Adventist education is. I've been in the education system for 22 years in both the Department of Education and at the City University. So I do believe in Christian education. I do believe in Adventist education. And when it comes to education, I think that schools ought to be places where leaders want to lead, where teachers want to teach, where students want to attend, and where parents want to send their children. And so as the discussion came forth, we talked about this idea of the unified system. And so when I think about the unified system and listening to everyone, I'm thinking about how all of these pieces are actually coming together. So I am hearing, for example, that the pieces are on the table, that Adventist education is good. But I also am hearing at the same time that even though the basic pieces are there, that something is amiss. So therefore, I think it behooves us then to go back to all these pieces, whether we talked about, we talked about the curriculum, we talked about enrollment, right? Nobody talked about buildings and grounds, but I fully believe in aesthetics and its value on learning. We talked about faculty and staff and recruitment. And I think then to get to this unified system, we need to take each of these apart and ask ourselves then, how are we doing this well? What is the value proposition that we're offering in each of these different elements? And we can start from there. There probably are things that we're doing great at. And then there are other things that we are saying that we need some help here. If we look at, for example, if I'm thinking even of in terms of, we talked about recruitment. Even in terms of recruitment, there were great ideas, tuition subsidies, and so on. But even when we recruit and we bring in staff, whether it's on the leadership level or on the teacher level, we also need to think then about how do we train them? Is teacher training a part of that? And this continuous development, which comes under, somebody mentioned that before, which comes under support. How are we supporting our teachers when they're there? How are we hearing the voices, not just of parents, but I think students are often the voices that give us the best tools that we can use to improve on what we do. In other words, I'm hearing, for example, I heard Linden SDA School mentioned several times today. But there are several other schools within Northeastern Conference, which tells me then that yes, there are good things and yes, there are good teachers, but then whatever is happening at Linden SDA School, how do we duplicate that in the other schools? So that no matter where a parent sends their school within Northeastern, they can experience that same value proposition that Linden is offering. Because these are the things, the speaker before me also mentioned, that millennials want to send their children to Adventist schools. And you're asking, and you ask the president a question. Now, I would flip that on the other way around, and I would think, send our children to the schools. Because when we do send the children to the school, that helps with the enrollment issues. That helps with the recruitment issues. Recruitment is also tied into the finances. So if we, as a 60,000 body member, if we all send our children to our Adventist schools, we will help fix the enrollment problem. We can help fix the problem in terms of the finances as well. And then be able to hire the individuals, the specialists that you're calling for, to be able to come in, dissect these issues, and fix these issues as much as we can. Because I believe it can be done. And I believe that we're also at a time in history where it needs to be done. Our children need to be in our schools right now. And so putting these pieces together, highlighting all the great things, the great work the teachers are doing, as well as being able to say, what other pieces in this unified system do we need to get the ball rolling on this? That's my 2 minutes, I think.
Dr. Colwood, thank you so much. I think you have made a tremendous analysis of everything that has been discussed here today so far. My tech team is trying to bring up the comments for me that are coming up online so I can highlight them for you. All right. So let me give you those quickly before we go to some other comments. A steady decline has occurred. One commentator said a steady decline has occurred because of financial burden attached to it. How do we make Adventist education more financially accessible? I think that Dr. Caldwell alluded to that a little bit, and I'm going to say something about what the administration is working on concerning this later on. Let me say it now quickly. We're actually working on creating a system whereby the parents can have their children enroll in our system and be able to assess how much you can pay based on your income. What that would mean is that you would need to upload it within a system, your financials, so that the system may be able to calculate based on your financial position how much in a sliding scale you'll be able to afford. But we do need to set the proper financial value to our education system. We cannot cheapening our financial requirement for our system and believe that by doing so we'll be able to meet the financial obligations. It just does not work. So we need to have the true value and then have scholarships that can supplement and offset for those parents who, because of their financial situation, cannot afford the full tuition. But if all of our kids are in our system, even if all of them are not paying full tuition, that in itself would be able to boost the enrollment and the finances within our system. So I want you to think about that. We're working on that, and we want you to make plans to be a part of that. The next comment here says, I am a parent of 3 sons who have been educated through SDA education. One of the issue is no faith in God to help us parents with fees. Fees has been an issue and fear of parents who believes they cannot afford the tuition. So that came from Judith Campbell. And another viewer says, what might be the reasons? Where do you propose we must start from? This is a genuine question. Do you think it might need to start with what? Oops, the comment just jumped away from me. Okay. Do you think it might need to start with what education of our children ought to look like today? And that's what we've been talking about. If the only thing unique about our schools versus character, public, or the spiritual component, then we have already lost the battle. Someone else here said, how do we plan to proactively advance a currently failing system without insight from teachers who are in the trenches or anyone under the age of 45 on this panel? Jim Jeanette said this: we sent our son to Adventist Church School in Jackson Heights, Greater New York Academy, and we sent him to Capeland LSAT to take the prep tests on Sundays because the Jews who were Sabbath keepers had a monopoly on Sunday. We had to have Pastor Richards, okay, yeah, that was my member some years ago, to write a letter that we were Sabbath keepers to get him into the class. They had a discussion on current events, and my son answered every question after the class was over. All the Jewish students wanted to take him out for pizza. My son went. Another comment says, our teachers need better employment packages so we can attract more young, innovative teachers. Another person here said, her name Paula Sanders Blackwell, she says, hire marketing people. Teachers and principals don't have the time to market the schools. We are too busy keeping the schools open and teaching. We are worn out. Another comment said, we need to empower the churches to get involved because we have lost children in our churches, but parents cannot afford tuition. And then someone else here said, Western New York needs church schools. Someone else here said, I wish more pastors would get involved with Christian education and support the schools in a proactive manner. Pastor/Dr. Eildon King is an example of actionable leader who support schools. Praise God for our secretary. Faye Patterson says, I get the sense that education in the Adventist schools are encapsulated with internal competition. What about the dynamic of evangelism at all our levels as leading is in this effort? While learning, is being offered. The next comment here says, I believe that it would help if schools were not just managed financially by constituent churches. That system has proven to fail. So that comment from that viewer speaks to something that was alluded to earlier by one of our millennials here present, where we need consolidation. We need to look at our system as a system. Our school system is one system with many branches. So if we look at it from that perspective, every church should be a church that is part of a school. Every church, not just a church that has a school building attached to them. We have one comment here in the house. I'm going to go to Pastor Reed.
Thank you. Silbert Reed here. I've been enrolled in our Adventist schools from the cradle to right now to the highest level. I believe in it, and my parents believe in it, and that's why they ensured I have it. John Maxwell, in his book, Winning People, he says that it doesn't take a genius to point out a problem. Anybody can do that. And this model, that he visioned and cast, is to say, I don't just want you to point out a problem. Tell me 3 things that we can do to fix that problem. I'm not going to point out any problems because we like to do that a lot. I want to share a few suggestions, 3 maybe, how to address this education problem. Firstly, we have to revise, revisit, and rewrite some of our policies that we have. By this, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me if we're part of an organization, but we don't want to support it. Let me flesh that out. If I don't have kids yet, I'm not even married yet, but all my children, I want to have 6, going to Adventist school. Do you see the mindset? I'm not married yet, but all of them going to school. That's what my parents did. They won't have a choice. How many of us really believe that? How can we be a part of the organization, but we don't want to send our children to that school? That's the first thing. We got to revisit those policies, and if you're in the institution, got to support it. Secondly, one of the comments mentioned it. We can't just have the the building or the church that is in close proximity to the school only supporting that school. All of our churches need to support that. It needs to be something that we talk about at our board meetings in the pulpit. It needs to be something where we're actually giving to it. And finally, we can't just think about just returning a tithe and offering and just think we're checked off with it. It's very important to not just give to the building committee and all these different things that we do in our school, but how many of us pay specific attention to say, okay, let me put $20 for education. Let me put this to help out someone. How many of you literally think about, oh, I know a student who's in school. How can I help support that person? And finally, we have to talk about our Adventist education system like it is the thing. We can't just scandalize it and make it seem as if it's not good, it's not important, it has a lot of problem. A lot of things out there have a problem, but we have to learn how to keep it within ourselves and how do we present ideas to fix the problems we have.
Thank you very much, Pastor Reed. Beloved, we are going to go for another 10 minutes, and then we are going to wrap up. But before we do that, I just want to highlight a few more comments, and then I'm going to have our panelist, Dr. Keto, has been waiting in the wings. I want her to come in and speak to the issue of equity, and also to tell us about a survey that we want to do from the Adventist K-12 Research Institute, where she is one of the leaders. I want her to speak to you about that survey that we want to implement in all of our churches at the end or after following this symposium. One of our comments online says that we need to focus more on special needs students for our schools. Someone else said that look at Liberty University system for an example. If children go to their schools from pre-K through high school, college is free. If our pastors promoted SDA Christian education from the pulpit and sent their own children, our enrollment issue will be greatly improved. Their active promotion would also shine a positive light on Christian education. Another comment here says, do you all know that 900 teachers quit in Austin School District in December? The problem is more than just money. People need to be a part of the conversation and a part of the solution. Another comment says, it's hard to recruit and retain qualified teachers because of the pay scale. Increase the pay. Give us more conference-paid teachers versus school-paid teachers. And then Dominique Justice Jules says, we need a school in every county. Angela King said, pastors' children must be enrolled in our schools also, thus leading by example. Only if they think our schools are, quote unquote, worthy of educating their children. And where are the school counselors? They are an important part of our school leadership, and our students would benefit greatly from having school counselors. Teachers are often treated as missionaries who will exist on meager salaries, but they have expenses like everyone else. I have a sister here waiting at the mic. Please tell us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Linda Porter. I am a educator in our school system. I'm the teacher, one of the teachers at Linda Nursery School. I'm also a mother of 3 boys that attend our schools. I am also a product of the Seventh Adventist School. And I would like to say that I do believe in our Seventh-day Adventist school education. Why? Because I have experienced it myself. Sloppy Seventh-day Adventist School is my alma mater, class of 1990. However, I am concerned. I am concerned for my three boys because I see that not a lot of my classmates are sending their children to our schools. When I asked them why, they said that the curriculum is not competitive. They said that their experience, their own personal experience back when they were in our schools, it was overwhelming. And they also were concerned of the special education teachers that are lacking in our schools. I have a mother that had taught in the public school system and was also the chairperson of the school board for many years. I've experienced the public school system and the Adventist system, and I know for a fact that I do not want any of my boys to be in our public schools. The education system that we have to put an extraordinary value on our education system. And I think that we have not done that. We need to promote the school like if we promote our evangelists. We need to promote the school just like how we promote our crusades. We need to promote our schools just like how we promote concerts or anything that is important to us. What we are lacking is getting the word out that Christian Seventh-day Adventist school is God's school, and that is it. Our students, our children, and some of us, even our grandchildren, need to be in our schools because Dr. Barnes said it earlier, it's all about belief. Now, I'm not going to say that my time at Father School was awesome all the 9 years I was there. I struggled, and I saw my teachers struggle too because of the lack of resources that they had, and I'm talking about the 80s. Yes, I'm telling my age. But at the end of the day, they did their best. And I think that if we can take a book or a page out of one of those schools that are excelling and turn it around and tweak it to the way God has directed us to do, then maybe, no, it will succeed. We will succeed. We just need guidance from God. We need guidance from God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read a few more comments from the viewers online. Then we're going to have, in 30 seconds, our panelists to give us some takeaways. And then I'm going to bring Dr. Kito to come back in to tell us about the trends, the survey and trends in Adventist education that we want to administer here in our conference territory. So one of our viewers asked, teachers are often, okay, well, I think I read that already. What about the idea of area schools are working by conference-wide? Do we plan to offer online education? Every church has an education department. Perhaps marketing can begin there. We need teachers who love to teach, who love the Lord and treat the children as Jesus would. It's about Christian education. Let's remember that. What is the plan for Northeastern Academy? Can someone at least address this, please? We give on a global scale to the colleges, but we need to start with the elementary first. Before they enter university, They must go through elementary first. And then the last comment I will read is from Owen George. It says, there are three components to consider: the product, Christian education; the market, the church and community; the philosophy, preparing young minds for time and eternity; approach, resources, I think this, or recesses of our resources. What do we have? I.e., people, resource, educators, and supporting personnel, etc., and reallocate people based on needs, assets, building and available spaces. The geographical scope operates schools by districts, not by individual churches. And then 4, collaborate with sister conference. So I have 2 people at the mic. So I'm going to take these 2 comments before we wrap up, and these will be the last comments. Yes, go ahead in the middle mic, and then Brother Shaw.
Thanks, Pastor. My name is Maurice Grant, and I do not currently work with Northeastern Conference, former member. I'm currently with the Great New York Conference of Barnes. And just to really say something positively on education and those who serve in the system, I think we need to also look at who we have as teachers and the quality of teachers that we have. I know that sometimes there's this sort of, we can talk negatively about the teachers that we have, but I think we need to be reminded that the teachers that we have in our system are teachers who are well qualified. And I think the system that we go through, the rigorous training system, especially for keeping teachers credentialed, is very rigorous. So we can talk about how we compare to our public school compatriots. In addition to that, I think some of the things that we need to look at, and is a question that we look at, is how do we recruit recruit students? Because I think that what we have in our system, and we can think of our system as an evangelistic system where we want to educate everybody. And so we have where students who are failing in the public school system and who have issues in that system, they're then dumped into our system. And that causes some sort of an issue or even somewhat hemorrhaging of what we try to do in our system. Is it then that we question how do we then accept students into our system? And then with that in mind, when we talked about the special ed, yes, we know we need to probably look at how we train our teachers then to handle this sort of system. But then the question is, how do we then handle that system of taking in just about anybody into our system? And then, of course, just really looking at how we can also encourage the morality or the morale of the teachers that are in the system that are really doing a fantastic job and are helping the system to get along.
Thank you very much. Brother Shaw.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Yolanda Shaw, and I'm from the Linden Seventh-day Adventist Church. Let me bring this up a little bit. So my name is Yolanda Shaw, and I'm from the Linden Seventh-day Adventist Church. I want to say before I start that I'm not here to attack or I'm not here to bring down anyone. However, I had to remove my kids from Linden so I don't sue the system for educational malpractice. That's one. As a paying customer, it seems as though the school or the system was paying me to have my kids in the school, the way in which I was treated or the way in which some of us parents were treated. I'll leave that right there. The next thing is that I think there's a lack of cohesiveness between the schools and the conference itself. For example, a lot of our schools have gyms, but as a conference would do when it come on to basketball and volleyball season, we will spend thousands of dollars to go elsewhere to rent other people's gyms, while our gyms needs to be fixed and can be used for the same activities that our church have for young people. I'll just leave that right there.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask the panelists at this time in 30 seconds to give us your takeaways today. And I have been, management is holding me to the 30 seconds, so I'm going to hold you to the 30 seconds as well. All right, so we'll start with Professor Phipps.
Well, I'll start or end with a quote from Ellen G. White. As long as we sail with the current of the world, we need neither canvas nor oar. It is when we turn squarely about to stem the current that our labors begin. So with that said, we heard a lot of positive things that clearly our constituency is unaware of. So part of that responsibility falls on all of us who are involved in the system to get better at articulating exactly what it is that we have to offer. In terms of finance, people will pay for where they believe value is. We have to create and put the value of the educational system to what it actually costs, and then find ways to subsidize that for those who need it. But every time we decrease the cost of tuition, all we're saying is we're providing a cheaper product. That's a psychological battle that we have to understand. It's the way that people think psychologically about where they spend their money. Accountability is clearly important, and it falls on all of us, again, both parents and administrators, to hold each other accountable for providing what it is that we say that we have to offer.
Thank you very much. Dr. Barnes.
Create mentorship initiatives for future school administrators, leading to growth, progress, and change. I'm taking this away. I would like to also add that there's a big concern about special needs. This is, again, another kept secret. We have been collaborating with the Office of Non-Public Schools in New York City, and every year we get hundreds of thousands of dollars to address that specific area of our education. And that is one area that we're working on, and we have many teachers who have masters in special education. And our, again, assistant superintendent is working with them, creating a program for all our students.
Dr. Usher.
Yes, I am so happy for this conversation today, because I am pulling away that we have people in our audience today that are willing to work with us. So I'm seeing here that we already start forming teamwork where we come together to make our educational system better than what it is right now. And I also appreciate the positive comments, because we do work hard in our Adventist system. I personally am a committed principal, go above and beyond for our students.
Thank you very much. Dr. Herdin.
Thank you. I'll be quick, but sometimes there's a heaviness on my heart, and I've listened to all of the comments that have been made, those good, bad, and different kinds of things. Dr. Keto said last week when we were talking, this whole piece of Seventh-day Adventist Christian education is a spiritual thing. She said it's a spiritual thing, and I don't take that lightly, and I don't think that any of us would. Another piece that, because it's spiritual, the question has to be asked, have we lost our unique, our distinctiveness as Seventh-day Adventists? If so, then how does that impact on our whole attitude towards sending our children to Seventh-day Adventist schools?
Good question.
And it is something that we're saying evangelism and education are one. What would be good is to actually show us how that is actualized. Not just said, but how do you actualize that if education and evangelism are one? One thing that I would want to, several things, I think, and we've said it here, this whole sense of community. So that what if this entire conference, just like they have in war, but we can have a war on education in a sense where we marshal ourselves and marshal our energies so that every departmental director in Northeastern Conference would be able to provide and submit a plan to our president, because what he's done today is absolutely marvelous. But something tangible, if that's a win to take away from here, is that every department provide a plan as to how you support education. How would that work in your field? If we also had something to say to pastors every single Sabbath for 365 or 52 weeks, we'd like for you to have emphasis. I know you need me to go, but otherwise we're wasting our time if we don't let me finish at least this sentence. Because as I'm thinking, we're here and we're brought here today, and I'm telling you, people had high hopes for this. It wasn't just an exercise. It's not just an event, you know. So that's the reason why I want us to be able to think about some of these things. And somebody asked a question about Northeastern Academy. How dare we leave here today and we haven't said anything about Northeastern Academy?
Thank you. We're going to bring in Dr. Keto at this time for her to speak to us about the Trends in Adventist Education survey that we want to administer to all our churches within our territory. Dr. Keto.
If I might, Dr. Richards, before I talk about that survey.
Use audio, please.
Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me, Dr. Richards? Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Keto. Can you speak? See if we can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Dr. Richards?
Okay, Dr. Keto, go ahead and speak. They can hear you online, so go ahead and speak about the survey. They can hear you online, so go ahead.
Okay, before speaking about the survey, I'd just like to make a few comments about the symposium as a whole. You know, we pointed out a lot of challenges that Northeastern Conference has with regard to education. And I think it's useful for those to be out, and they are out. And I think it's however, for those to be out, and they are out. However, I think that the administrators in the conference are going to get together a group of people that represent all the different constituencies of the conference and form a strategic plan. Much of it based on the information gathered today. I want to make one comment as a researcher and as an educator, and remember, I'm an education evangelist, that the issue that we have is primarily communication. And if you look at communication theory and experience, you'll see that in almost every, if not every relationship, it's communication that's an issue. And we've talked about that today regarding marketing and PR. But we have also talked a lot about challenges that we're faced here in Northeastern Conference. And if this symposium is not to be a loss, we need to act immediately. And Dr. Jules, am I still on? So let me now move from strategy, a strategic plan, which is an absolute must after this symposium. But now let me talk about this survey of current trends in Adventist education, which your pastors will get via SurveyMonkey. It takes 8 to 9 minutes to complete.
Dr. Quito, I would like you to just say in 30 seconds, if you could just tell us about the trends in Adventist, current trends in Adventist education survey that we would like to administer here in the Northeastern Conference.
That's what I've been trying to, well, I'll say it again, okay, if you didn't hear it. It's a survey that's going to take 8 to 10 minutes. Your pastors will tell you about it. It will be administered via SurveyMonkey. And this will give the conference some information about members and how you feel about Adventist education. Dr. Richards, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I'm sorry that we're having
feedback.
issues with the audio. I can hear you, and I'm sorry we're having issues with the audio.
So allow me, Dr. Quito, I will just finish up saying something about the survey, if you don't mind, since we're having those issues. So the survey is about trends in Adventist education. And what it does, it measures what are the leaning trends within our constituency. It will measure whether we are spiritually conservative, spiritually liberal, or spiritually in between. And they have found that by doing this survey, they can actually predict what type of schools those who fall in the different categories will be looking for. So that information is going to be very important for us as we think about a strategic plan and also a unified strategy in order to tailor where we are going from here, because we don't want to just talk about education as something superfluous or speak about it in a esoterical way, but we want to actually use actionable decisions or ideas that we can use. So everything that has been shared today, we are gathering all of this information, and all of this will be used as we move forward. We want to thank our panelists today for your time, for coming out here on a Sunday morning. We want to thank Dr. Quito for getting up very, very early on the West Coast to be with us today on a Sunday morning. And we want to thank all of you who have taken the time today to come and be a part of this conversation. Please share this broadcast so that others who were not watching us live can watch the replay of this, so that as much people as possible can join and be a part of this conversation. Thank you so much for having been here. And now I turn the program over to Dr. Abraham Jules, our president.
Thank you, Dr. Richards. We are grateful for the presence of each of you, those of you who joined us virtually, and those of you who were with us in person. I would be remiss if I did not express my profound thanks and appreciation to Dr. Warner Richards, our moderator today, for the fine job he has done in bringing us all together and leading us in this important discussion. The truth of the matter is the conversation continues. Today we were not able to in any way answer all of your questions and satisfy your needs. But we began a conversation today that we need to continue in the days ahead for the betterment and amelioration of our education system. We're grateful for all of you who joined us with your comments virtually, those of you who were able to speak in person here, our panelists who were with us this morning through this afternoon, and also Dr. Keto from California. We want to thank them all for their contributions. Would you put your hands together, those of you who are with us today, for their impact on our education system. Let me just say to you, it's like when you put on weight, and you put on that weight over a 20-year period, and you want to lose all of that weight in one day. It can't happen. We begin a process here today of listening, as Dr. Richards says. We listen. We'll take what you say that makes sense to us as much as we can to implement some of these suggestions to make certain our education system becomes better, stronger, and we're able to contribute to the wealth of knowledge of our young people, our children, not only for this world, but for the world to come. We all have one common goal, and that is to be a blessing to our children and to our youth. And as we seek to clear that path going forward, we should always do that very prayerfully and carefully. We do what we can, God does the rest. I'm convinced that our best days are ahead. I'm convinced that some changes will be made. I'm convinced that some things you may not always agree with. And if you want us to agree with everything you say today and implement those things, then our conversation was in vain. But we pull our ideas together. We come about and create some solutions that will be for the benefit of our education system. I believe, my brothers and sisters, those of us who are here today and those of you who have joined us, I believe that coming together, beginning this conversation today, it's a great start. But I want to invite all of you to continue this conversation. And I'm going to say this to you. You can have a direct line to me and to Dr. Barnes and our education department. You can email us with your suggestions. You can even call. We are willing to listen in the days ahead, because before this school year ends, some decisions must be made by our field, by our conference, for our education system. We cannot keep going along with a broken system in broken places. Some kind of healing, some kind of amelioration, some kind of change must be made to impact us positively in the days ahead. I know these are difficult times. I know these times call for thoughtfulness and prayer, diligence, bringing our brightest minds together. We began that today, and to talk together and to make some decisions that will be a major blessing to our field. I want to encourage all of you who are listening to me today to promise that you'll be in prayer with us. This is a matter of life and death. The eternal destinies of our children and our youth are at stake, and the viability of our Christian education offerings are in peril. I want you to join us, and I want you to be in prayer with us. I don't want it to ever be said that we didn't listen to you, because some of the things I heard today impacted me, and we want to continue to listen to you. I am making it as plain as daylight to you. Please reach out to me. Reach out to our education department. We will listen. We will hear you. And we'll do what we think is best for our children and our youth. At this time, I want you to stand to your feet. Those of you who are in person here with us, Elder Robert Chandler will come and bring to us our benediction.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we approach your throne at this time. For you have sat and you have looked down upon us. You have listened, O God, and you have spoken to us. And God, we do not take none of this lightly because we think it's important to us, but it's more important to you. And therefore, we do not want to go forward without you. We do not want, oh Lord God, for our desires and our decisions to be the one that's made today. We want your guidance. You said if we lack wisdom, you are the great teacher, to come to you and you will give it to us, Lord. Father, this is not something that you cannot heal. It's not something that you cannot fix. It's something, oh God, that you have given to us as a vision, that we can now form this vision, and therefore our system will not perish. And so we give ourselves, first of all, to you right now, asking God that you take ourselves out of the picture so that we can hear from heaven and do what you ask us to do. Lord, it's your school. And I'm not praying to you to put it on you. I'm praying to you to ask you, God, to use us in your vineyard to do the right thing. You have given us this opportunity, and let us not do it on our own, but do it with you and with each other. So, Lord, take everything we have heard today. Take the things that's in our heart. Take our emotions and all that we have brought and all the things we've bottled up inside of us, and use them to your honor and to your glory. What we have today, we ask you to bless it, Lord. Our failing schools, Lord, we ask you to bless them, Lord. Our tired teachers and principals, we ask you, Lord, to bless them and comfort them, Lord God, we pray. Father God, the overwhelming burden that now falls on us as administrators, Lord, we ask you, Lord, to help us and lift that burden and allow us to let you carry that burden for us, Lord. As we leave this place today, help us, Lord, to not leave with negativity, but to leave with a renewed assurance that you are in this with us. So, Father, guide each and every one of us, each pastor, each teacher, each principal, each administrator, each parent, Lord, each student, God. Lord, let this school system in this conference be a crown in heaven, Lord, we pray. Thank you, God, for each and every one of us. As we leave this place, take us home safely and help us, Lord, to continue to walk day by day with you. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.